It's certainly true in higher education now, Jim. I don't know, 60-40 women and men in higher education now. But I'm teasing in terms of, but the serious thing is that we don't speak enough about the fact that women have equal responsibility to men in the leadership of Presbyterian life. And frankly, that is a serious, open question, not only in North America, but in the church throughout the world. And Asian societies and African societies that have been traditional societies need also to have equal representation of men and women, and Catholics and Baptists and other parts of the Christian family need to have equal representation of women and men. And that's a missionary portion of what our Christianity can testify to, and that is that the church is vibrant with both women and men sharing responsibility, and the inclusion of folk of all the ethnic strains in leadership of the church is extremely important. They say in the church growth material that a homogeneous unit has less problems, and that therefore churches grow when they're homogeneous in race and when they're hierarchical in gender. I think that may be true, but I think that's true only temporarily. And I think that the future is with inclusivity over against the hierarchy and exclusivity. But isn't that an interesting thing to try to ponder? And then the further thing is, what is growth? Pew Research did a study, and their indications of growth, Christian growth, had to do with how frequently you say prayers and how frequently you read the Bible, which are very important things. And we're probably not doing enough of it. No, we're not. I know I'm not. But those are not the primary indications of discipleship and growth. Primary indications of discipleship and growth are following what Jesus told us to do, which is feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the prisoners. What else? Give drink to the thirsty, send of pardon? Clothe the naked. I mean, so that's the way. It's not religiosity. It's the way that Christians are exercising discipleship, and there are many, many important things to do that way. I want to say that African American Presbyterians have never been a heavy part of the Presbyterian Church, but they've been a very important part, and I'm privileged to be with some of the African American congregations that are thriving right now. And I am not equally present with Spanish-speaking groups of Presbyterians, but I understand that there's thriving among those groups. And Carol, you may be with them, get to be with them more than I do. But those are areas in which Presbyterians spent more energy in past generations than we do now. And one of the things to look at is, and think about and pray about, is how much energy and resources you can devote to helping African American Presbyterian churches and Native American churches and churches of Spanish-speaking Americans, in addition to the work that you do with post-by Methodists. And there's one more sentence. It's really tempting to think of a zero-sum game between African American congregations and the integration of a church like Second. And of course, those that have studied it know that that's not a zero-sum game. There are African Americans who need to be in African American churches, and there are African Americans who need to be in Second and other predominantly Caucasian churches. Yes?
I think one of the reasons we have so few black members is there's a flourishing Black Presbyterian church.
So there is a flourishing, and you're partners with it in its ministry.
But
Yeah.
which one is that?
Which one?
down on Michigan Road.
Witherspoon.
It's, I don't think it's close.
I think I just found something that y'all have some more work to do on, right? I mean, in terms of looking and thinking and all the partnerships you've got going, it may well be that there is a partnership. And one of the hard things for a church like Second is you don't want to, in a partnership, you don't want to be the ones contributing condescension and have them be the ones contributing either envy or resentment. And that's a tough part of being a partner when the resources are not equal. But I know that from Jim and from Lewis and from Bunny and from others I've been talking about, I know that you know how to not contribute condescension in partnerships. And so that's a particularly important task in partnerships. Rachel Wan serves you and serves the Edinburgh Church. And to hear her talk, Second has been exemplary in that partnership, and so has Edinburgh. And she's so happy now because Edinburgh has another new mission in clothes closet and food pantry. And so those folk are feeling like they're contributing to others. Yes.
I know we don't want to speak of it, but the elephant in the room is fear.
Oh, thank you.
And I think is we at some point can get past that fear. And
Yeah.
we all-
Your statement is that fear is the elephant in the room. I retired 5 years ago. My wife says I lost my inhibitor. I don't think I was afraid of things before, but I know I'm not afraid of them now. Let me speak just a minute about fear. In the Christian faith, the Spirit casts out fear. And so you grow in faith, your fear diminishes. I got to say that in Christian practice, the same thing happens. As you grow in practice of hospitality, your fear diminishes. So there may be, you say hello to somebody sitting on your pew now, and they say, oh, it's good to see you too. I've been a member here 10 years. They're not the new visitor that you thought they were. In Williamsburg Church, that scared the bananas out of some folks some time ago. I think we're doing a better job now. And so if somebody says, I've been here 10 years, say, well, you got to go to the 9:30 service because I'm at the 11 o'clock service or something like that, you see, and it's a different thing, yes.
The other thing I've always heard is fear and love cannot occupy the same space.
Thank you. And I know which one y'all are after. Yes.
I'll add another one. The opposite of faith is not doubt,
Yeah.
it's fear.
Thank you. That's just really important. You got another one? Yes.
Okay, I'll spell out fear. It's false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. I mean, once you start focusing on fear, it really helps to see. All of us have occasions of I call it. It's not quite fear, but it's afraid of being embarrassed, or maybe fear of embarrassment, or something like that. At a pretty. But then you go to Kenya, and you may have a fear for being kidnapped, or that's a more adequate fear and a more appropriate fear because it means you're stepping out. In the early church, I mentioned this Friday night, but in the early church, the Christians naturally were suffering by being Christian. And the Korean Presbyterians say that that's one reason that the Americans are not flourishing in Presbyterian circles now, is that we don't do enough suffering. And so then I was reading early in the morning at Lewis and Bunny's, reading Colossians and reading Corinthians. And both of those early churches, Paul tells to be joyful in your suffering. And here, not too many of us are far enough along to be sacrificially involved in Christianity. And let me tell you, when you are involved sacrificially, it's the most joyful way of being a Christian. And the Korean Presbyterians say, you know why Korean American Presbyterians can't preach? Because they don't use enough martyr stories in their sermons. You can't have a good sermon without a martyr story. And so there's that, but they have martyrs within generations. They've got martyrs, and within 2 generations, they've got a whole bunch. So at any rate, that's a very important part. Are you in partnership with Korean Presbyterian churches?
Mm-hmm. We actually have a fair number, well, it's a small, but, I don't know, maybe 20 Korean Americans who are actually
Who are members of Second.
But yes, there are.
And again, both is important. Both having folk here and having folk in Hangul speaking. Other questions or comments? Yes.
This is sort of aside from the subject, but I've been a Presbyterian all my life, and I understand one of my concerns is all the emphasis on denominational uniqueness. I was born in Iowa. I realize that this situation is not unique to Iowa, but particularly when I go back to Iowa, to these small Iowa towns, there'll be 5 or more churches of various denominations, maybe 100 members per church.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky.
Yeah.
They are barely able just to sustain the church. They probably can't afford to sustain a pastor if there's even a pastor available. We're not producing enough pastors. And I realize that it's ultimately their decision, are we going to somehow get together? But do you have a comment on that?
You bet. I got a comment on just about everything. but the thing there is there are so many possibilities for small churches. And most small churches get into a survival mode right quick, which is the mode that you're describing. And that makes you circle the wagons and get defensive. And defensive churches just scarcely have the ability to be churches. So what happens is that they lose their soul before they lose their building. And so one of the infusions of hope is for little churches like that to look at other little churches like Edinburgh Church or like the churches that I describe in the book, where they got 100 members at one of the churches that Lewis Bunny was a preacher. Lewis was the associate pastor at Calypso in eastern North Carolina. That church has 110 members or 120 members. They're doing all kind of mission stuff. They're represented disproportionately in the county efforts of ecumenical churches. They're represented disproportionately in the ministries of the presbytery. They've got 6 or 7 members of that church that are really, really stalwart folk. And so they're not threatened about the future. They do get scared when they look out and see other churches in the presbytery diminished. So, I mean, that's one of the first things to say about a small church is that it can be a vibrant community. But the second thing is that they've got to figure out a way out of survival to
Well,
be.
it seems, you know, they're so tied to their denomination.
Yeah.
And so, you know, okay, well, are we all gonna join the Presbyterian Church or
Yeah.
the Methodist? Is the solution that they just become community church?
I don't know. I can't. I mean, I presume every little town in Iowa is different, you know. But for some of them, probably so. For some of them, not. Yes.
So do you see a rise or expect to see a rise, though, in the federated model?
Oh yes, it's rising. It's rising. And new church developments frequently are federated models. Extremely important in new church thinking. And in new church thinking among Presbyterians in the current situation.
What's a federated model?
Well, two churches, sorry, 2 minutes. Different kinds of federations, but it's that you're going to be both Presbyterian and Methodist. So or that you're going to be both Presbyterian and United Church of Christ. Or that you're going to have a community church to which you then send, from which you send representatives to several different denominations and see if they'll take you. But in a number of congregations that are quite vibrant, Salisbury, Virginia has, Salisbury, Kentucky. Salisbury, well, this is a little thing in South Richmond, a small community, and they've got a 1,200 member church that's both Presbyterian and Methodist, and it was because they wanted a congregation in that development, and so they went to different denominations and asked them, and the Presbyterians and Methodists said, we'll do it. So that's the church, and that's a
So it's a
federated
new
church.
church
It's quite hard.
development.
Pardon?
It's a new church development.
It's a new church development. Now it's 10 years old. And the pastor looks out, in the morning showed me, look out in the morning from the pulpit, and you look through a clear window, and you can see the 8th T of the Gospels. And he said one of his most disappointing times in the whole world is when he looks out that window when he starts preaching and sees 2 of his elders teeing off. But that's life. I mean, that's the way it is for churches.
Let's skip the
Our timing is our time's gone. I just want to say that I really appreciate being with you. I think your church is a marvelous, vibrant congregation. I love your mission, and I really hope that the areas in which we're talking become areas in which your internal discussions continue, and if I can be of any assistance in that, I'm delighted to do it. God bless you, and Jim, should I give